All right. Well, so I literally sat down last night in front of my phone to record, and I woke up sitting, like in a sitting position. There's a shampoo bottle on the floor, but it looked like we connected at some point. I have no idea why I'm like, I'm either narcoleptic or I have mono or I'm dying from something more nefarious than that. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I gotta go get my blood tested or go get. It's the weirdest shit. Like, I'm like, I'll get up, I'll have a little bit of energy. Like, I'll go outside, smoke a cigarette, make some food, come back in, pass out. And I'm a father, I'm a partner. Got a documentary that's in like the late stages of post production. Got a Patreon community that depends on me for content. I have responsibilities, so it's a major thing when I'm having issues like this, where it's like fatigue that's like so severe that I can't really do anything throughout the day, and I just can't figure out what the fuck's wrong with me. So that's what happened last night. I haven't been doing anything, which sucks, you know. And Karina is definitely feeling imprisoned because she's just sits here all day. She doesn't have a driver's license because she had DUIs, and she's in the process of taking her classes to get her license back, but she can't really leave here without me. I mean, she can go outside, but it was like 108 degrees yesterday, so she can't walk too far in that kind of heat. So it's just been this ongoing shitty thing. But let's get into the story. Today I'm going to try to go out and do stuff just for her sake and our son's sake. It's not fair to them. But I want to get back to the prison stuff on my third prison term, because definitely, like, by this phase in the story or in the timeline of when I was at Centinela, you know, I felt like it was all going to be downhill. Like, I survived orientation. Like, I got really lucky in a sense because the cops took me out of orientation basically because they knew that someone was there trying to hit me. You know, someone like was actually in orientation that had no desire to go to the 1 yard, was there for the sole purpose of exacting revenge, probably because, I don't know. You know, I've heard so many different stories about what happened. You know, and people, I try not to read comments, but a lot of people want to give opinions about this particular situation. It's complicated. I mean, above all, I had a child that was waiting for me, and that trumps everything, you know. And I've said it a million times, like, if you can't understand why I didn't want to do things that there was a good chance that I'd get caught for. I'm talking about, like, being involved with politics that could catch me years in prison, you know? And yes, it's to play devil's advocate on the other side of that. I was doing drugs the whole time that I was in prison. Definitely not proud of that, and I'm not saying that there's any justifiable reason why I was using drugs in prison, especially when I have a kid out there. You know, I see stuff on the news, and you see, like, or I mean, even people I know in real life get their kids taken by CPS because they can't stop doing drugs. For so long, I would be like, well, that person's a piece of shit. You know, when I have Nico, it's going to change me. It's going to save me. And I wish that that were the case, but that's just simply, if it was true, where you have to start putting yourself before another human, and that somehow that would just defeat addiction instantaneously, I would have stopped a long time ago, because the only family I had was my mom and dad, and I was destroying them throughout my whole addiction. That's not how you recover. It's not how you get off drugs. It has nothing to do with other people. It has nothing to do with being selfless, being like, okay, you know, I'm going to stop doing drugs now because I have a kid. I've seen people do that. And I've seen a lot of people inevitably crash. Some people are able to do that, and more power to them. My whole thing is people that are good parents, in my opinion. I think that that's the most important thing in life. You know, there's nothing more important once you have a child than being the best version of yourself for that child. It's complicated when you have one and your addiction isn't addressed. The one thing that I think Karina, my parents, my people that are really close to me had always said that was encouraging was that I did have 3 years sober at one point. So they knew that it was possible for it to happen to me again. Talk about sobriety like it's like a fucking alien abduction. Man, recovery happened to me, man. I don't know. I was just in the woods and I saw a bright light, and now I don't boof ecstasy anymore. It doesn't really work like that, you know? It's multifaceted. It's physical, emotional, mental, and it's spiritual, you know? And that was always like the spiritual side of it was always the hard part, because I ridiculed religion and I associated spirituality with religion, and it's not. It's just acknowledging that you're not the only asshole in the world. Even if, like, you see one more. Oh, look, there's another one. That guy's a dick too. But, like, at least now you know that the whole world doesn't just revolve around you. Acknowledging that you're not alone in the universe is, like, the most simple way that I was able to grasp that concept. As silly as that sounds. And, like, for people that are like, what do you mean? I've always known that there were other assholes besides me. It's like, well, I don't know. That's the way that I was able to understand that concept after so long. But anyway, the point is once I'd gotten to the 1 yard, it was really like if they were making like a Lifetime like drama about my life, it would show me like in that golf cart, like crying, like wrapped in a blanket, like I was like some fucking refugee or something, like shaking, like I was on some boat, like making some narrow escape. I felt like that. You know what I'm talking about in movies when people go through something really traumatic and then they're like leaving? I don't know, it's like horror movies a lot, like it's the third act at the end, they're just like in a blanket, they're like looking back at all the crazy shit that happened to them. That's how I felt, and I really in my mind thought that it was behind me, you know. So then I get there, and there's that welcoming committee that we had talked about, and I was like, all right, great. You know, you don't know what the volatility's like because you don't really have direct contact with that yard. The 1 yard's different than where I was at. I was at the 3 yard on orientation, even though we weren't part of that yard. That was a SMY 3, right? Or GP, SMY, different populations, but we were all locked in our cells, so we couldn't mingle with the 3 yard people. That felt like it was going to last forever. And it's not like we had direct contact with the 1 yard, so I had no idea if I was going to walk into some sort of ambush or what was going to happen. But after I ended up getting there and seeing that, you know, Dirty was basically somebody that got along with everyone. He was a nice guy, charismatic. I'm going to try to get him to do an interview with us so that you can hear about the riots from his side. You know, I think that would probably be interesting to hear somebody else that was like neck and neck with me during all that crazy shit that we went through. So anyway, once I get there, I see that it's basically a free-for-all. There's cell phones, you know, there's drugs, and the way that I explained it on the last video, my friend was basically the mule. So he was going and he was working in the administrative office, and he was coming back with like bowling ball size plugs of drugs. He had like fucking boulders. It was like the boulder from Indiana Jones. I was like, how'd you stick that up your ass? He's like, this isn't even drugs. This is just wet newspaper. I'm practicing, bitch. I'm like, oh, Jesus, that's hardcore. And, you know, he'd like expand his asshole. It looked like a bird like a mother bird feeding another bird. It was like all gaping. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see his asshole. I'm just speculating. All right. So anyway, sorry. Push notifications. So I get there, and we're just straight partying. Right? I shoot heroin the first night I'm there. You know, and of course there's going to be people that don't get it. They're like, oh my God, like, all this preaching about being a good father, and there you are using drugs. How could you do that? I don't know. I mean, why does anybody use drugs? Why does anybody hurt their wives or their kids or their parents or whoever because of their addiction? You know, yes, some of it is being selfish. A lot of it is self-medicating. You know, I'd gone through something pretty traumatic, and it's like, you know, you get to this fork in a road. It's like, well, you can go through that door. You can feel great, forget about the trauma that you've just endured, or you can just continue just to kind of feel shaky about the whole thing. Shaky Jake. I was like, fuck that. I don't want to be that guy anymore. I'm going down this door. And I got high. So the next day, I'm seeing how this yard works. And it just, everybody's getting loaded everywhere. There wasn't a lot of alcohol there. There was a lot of weed. There was a lot of meth. And there was a lot of heroin. You know, and I've never been a fan of meth in jail or prison situations because people start getting weird. You know, I mean, you're seeing people in front of the mirror, you know, picking at shit with tweezers. Same stuff you'd see out here, but prison is already not a very stable place. So when you have a bunch of people on meth, when you have group showers, if you're going to talk about a sex riot popping off, probably the greatest potential would be when like boulders of crystal meth hit, you know, and everybody's in up for like 9 days. They're like, fuck it. Let's just make some sort of sexual truce right now. Like, we're not even, there's no tension. I don't care. I'll suck yours if you suck mine. Like, okay. And then you guys come down and then you're like, ew, queer, and you like kill the person. I knew that I was getting out at some point. And I don't remember on the last video, because I've been doing different storylines for Patreon, I don't remember if we had talked about if they had changed my date or not. But there was a period where the counselor had brought me in there and showed me what my date was, you know? And, you know, I had, I think originally I was supposed to get out in August. But when they called me in there, they said I was going to get out in March 25th. So I think it took off 2 months for my sentence. They like took 60 days off, but it was crazy. Like, they brought me into the counselor's office and he's like, hey, you're going home on this date. And it was 60 days from that date. So it had to have been, February. You know, it was like probably February 25th, the date changed. And I remember calling Karina and she was like crying. She was so happy because it was like the nightmare was finally coming to an end. Now, the thing is at any moment while I was at that 1 yard, I was going to be able to, I could lose that 33%. You're talking about going from having to serve a couple more months to having to serve 4 more months, or if I get an ad charge, maybe even longer than that. So I was really trying to stay in my lane. And I'm pretty sure we had discussed the fact that we had gotten a kite from Chewy, from the orientation yard, saying that they were coming, that busload of people, the riot that I had missed, because I had stayed in the cell that morning and I had drinking instead of going to breakfast. I knew something was going to go down. I didn't know that it was going to be my cellie getting beat up, Chubbs getting beat up. Basically, I don't know if defending me is the right way to say it, but he was collateral damage. Let's put it that way. And I'd missed that riot. You know, I didn't want to, I'm not trying to be forced into some fucking PC gang. You know, at this point, I'm still looking at anybody that's SNY as a piece of shit, you know? You're programmed this way your entire incarceration. And on top of that, now they're basically trying to strong arm me into joining their gang. And on top of that, they're trying to say that I need to stab somebody or now I'm going to be a target with them. So if I don't comply with what they're saying, then all of a sudden I'm going to be their target and I could get killed myself. So this puts me in a very interesting situation while I was still on the orientation yard because I didn't really know what to do. I'm not trying to get killed. I'm not trying to stab somebody. I'm not trying to catch more time. I want to get home to my baby. And the reason that I talk about this shit so much is to try to get you to understand what I was going through mentally at the time. I was getting tugged in a million different directions, and I didn't know what to do. Now at the 1 yard, and I know that I mentioned this in the previous video, the cops basically said that if we're already on that yard, so, let's say there was 100 guys on that yard. I don't remember exactly the number, but I think that's what it was. Say there was 100 guys on the yard. The cops know that it's S and Y and GP mixed, that it's already mixed. They know that we're getting along. So that anybody that comes to that yard from another yard, say you come from orientation from the same place that I'd come from, the 3 yard, or say that somebody comes from orientation in A yard, which remember I talked about was another orientation unit at Centinela that was comprised entirely of GP. So it was guys that hadn't even had a chance to get off yet. Guys that were general population, they'd bring you to that unit. And while you're in that unit, when these guys are going to chow, every time they eat, they're talking about going to this 1 yard and taking off on the first people they see because they know that the place we're at is like harmonious. They know that we're getting along. They know that there's S and Y. They don't know who. It doesn't matter because at that point, everybody that's on the 1 yard's PC anyway. Really consider this if you haven't been to prison. You can go home and be with your family, but you have to get along with this other population. People that and there's no sex offenders. It's just rats and dropouts, which I don't like. I don't like either. Dropouts, I guess, is a gray area because I can understand how you're sick of that life. A lot of those gangs do you dirty and you're over it. And, you want to choose a better life over that. And it's hard not to respect somebody that wants to better their life because the gang in prison shit's just ridiculous. But I'll never respect a fucking snitch, ever. Ever. Tekashi 6ix9ine, ridiculous. It's like, well, those guys screwed me over. No, it doesn't work like that. Like, you chose that life, You can't choose that life and then go back on it because, they did you wrong. And then you tell on somebody and put them in jail. That's just, it's never good. And I would never really understand how somebody could do that. But, it's like I just wanted to go home at that point. So I'm at this yard, and I've always been the kind of guy, I think that's why when I sold drugs, one of the reasons that I sold drugs was because I didn't see instant consequences with that. Let me explain. If you go rob a liquor store with a gun, it seems like an immediate consequence. Like, there's a pretty good chance that if you go to a 7-Eleven with a gun and you hold it up, that you're going to get caught. There's a pretty good chance that if you go rob a bank, you're going to get caught because of security, because they probably have like satellite probes from the sky that will come do anal reconnaissance missions up your asshole or whatever. With selling drugs, it always felt like, yes, if you get caught, the consequences are going to be drastic, but there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to get caught today, right? And I think whatever that guy's name is, Bob Forrest or whatever, he said, there's a famous quote where he says that he knew that drugs were going to kill him, but not tonight, and that's why he kept doing it. And it's the same kind of concept when you're selling drugs. It's like, that you're going to get caught eventually, but it doesn't feel immediate. So you're able to justify in your head, keep doing it. Well, I'll just keep doing it for a little longer. And then eventually I'll stop before I get caught. And you always get caught. Doing drugs in prison is the same way. It's like being involved with the political shit, beating somebody up, putting work in, being involved with riots, gang stuff. There's a really good chance you're going to get caught immediately. But like drinking or doing drugs, you know, I mean, you can do that stuff pretty covertly. You're not necessarily going to get caught. So that was my rationale. So my friend had come up to me and he had asked me, first of all, we knew that these guys were going to be coming from the 1 yard and that there was going to be a riot. But since the cops, like I said, they kind of let us, we got to fight these guys for free. You know, it was like a freebie is how they would say it, because they knew that we were not the problem. These guys coming from the other yards were what the problem was. So we knew that this was coming. Dirty's like, this is your chance to get revenge. Not only for all the bullshit that I had to endure while I was in the 1 yard, but also for what had happened to me at Santa Barbara County Jail. There's no way that what those guys did to me is correct. There's no way, you know? And that's why they live in a bush, and I live in a very small guest house in LA. But there's a difference. So in my mind, I did want revenge, you know? Not even revenge, you know? What I've always talked about, just my ego had been affected to the point that I didn't want to feel like a bitch. I already do when I pee anyway, because of how small my dick is. Or when I jerk off with like 3 fingers instead of like a full like grip, you know. I go like this. It feels really weird. Feels like I'm jerking off a cartoon or something. Like, you know, so just to have any dignity restored in this particular situation, I wanted to at least fight where the odds weren't so stacked against me. You know, in these other situations, it's 60 on 5. There's nothing tough about being on the other side of that. Oh, dude, me and 57 of my homeboys smashed out this dude. Why? I don't know. I heard he was PC. I wasn't even fucking PC. You know, it's just like I felt like I kept catching every bad break you possibly could. So in my mind, I knew that when I got there, Dirty and I were going to while out. We were going to beat them up. Dirty can fight. I can't really fight, but I can hit a couple times. Then if I start getting beat up, I can run towards a cop or something, or curl up in a ball, start pouring sand over myself, act like I'm a plant. Just be like, I'd probably figure out that I was a person. Like, look at that bitch trying to pretend he's a plant. Fuck that fool. Stomp me out. So while we're waiting for that to go on, and we had gotten word specifically of when it was going to be. I don't know if it was the first kite, but eventually found out it was going to be a Friday, and it was like a Wednesday. So it was the kind of thing where, like, you know, if it was a scene, if it was like in a film, there was like this tension building until the moment that we knew that it was going to go down. And typically you didn't know when they were going to bring busloads in, because usually it was like arbitrary. Cops did that on purpose so that there could be, since they were like letting us fight them for free, they didn't want like big organized responses. So you got to understand what the dynamics was at this place while we were waiting for this big riot to happen. Centinela, as I had explained, the 1 yard was a GP yard before they started doing the integration stuff. And most people weren't opposed to the integration stuff that were already on a 1 yard. Because usually when you're on a 1 yard, one of the main reasons that you're on such a low security place is because you're going home soon. Most people, even though they think girls and beer are whack, would rather be out drinking and fucking chicks than being with a bunch of guys. Eventually, or, you know, once in a while you run into someone where that's not the case, but for the most part, most people want to go home and be with their families, and drink beer, be around women. So when the integration stuff started happening, I think a lot of people just laid down. You know, they're just like, whatever. Put on blinders. Kind of same mentality that I had. You know, it's just like, I want to go home. That's it. Like, you know, I'm not going to tell on anyone to get there, but I'm also not going to keep getting in trouble for no reason, just for a completely senseless reason. So the Centinela 1 yard was GP people beforehand. That riot came in. Remember I told you the story where they'd set the digital camera up on the podium and they basically said, hey, if you guys go at it right now, we have you guys all on film. They had all these little digital cameras and it ended up going up. You know, not everybody's going to be okay with that. You know, especially if you're a Southsider, you know, or a Norteño. If you're from a gang, a Hispanic gang, you've basically signed up for a lifetime of this shit. So you can't just be okay with being in a SNY GP mixed yard because we've talked about it. Usually when you're a Southsider dropout, you have to debrief. Meaning you go roll it up when you're on a prison yard and you're like, I gotta go. And the cops go, okay, we'll let you go SNY, but you have to debrief and let us know like what's going on with your gang. So they basically turn those guys into snitches and they're the mortal enemy of the gangs for a good reason. Like I get it, you know. The Southsiders that were on the 1 yard that I was at had been there for a while and they had just, a lot of those guys were just nice guys. A lot of them were first termers, you know, had never been to prison before. And a lot of them had kids and felt the same way I did. They're just like, fuck it. I don't even care. They don't even care. You know, like why be part of like some sort of organized body of criminals where they put crime before family? Family should always be first. If you don't put family first, you're a scumbag. Period. I don't give a fuck who you are. And a lot of times what they're doing is jeopardizing doing significantly more time. You know, get off this yard. You know, catch 2 battery, catch 2 write-ups. All right, you just got like a 2-year shoot term with like an extra year added onto your sentence. You know, fuck that. So Southsiders that were there were cool, whatever. There were hardly ever fights there. And if there was a blind area behind the building that you could go. It was very like 80s. Like you felt like you were in Footloose, you know. I mean, nobody was wearing flannels. It felt like people were wearing like flannel button-ups, like with like their sleeves rolled up and they were wearing like tight jeans. It's like, come on, Eddie, get him. Come on, Eddie. You know, and like someone's just like blipping the other guy. It's like the kind of fights that would go down in a spot like this. Now, the white guys that were there, for the most part, were skinheads. You know how I feel about skinheads. I'm not a racist guy, and it's always been difficult for me to be in prison because I don't really like those words. You know, all the little racial slurs that people say. Right now, it's being politicized so fucking much, I don't even have an opinion on it. I'm just like, whatever. Like, I don't want to, like, say this life matters more than this life, or we shouldn't be mad that these people are mad, or those people are mad. Who gives a fuck? Right now, I'm just trying to take care of my family. That's it. And I'm like staying out of that whole thing. I tried like posting stuff about police brutality and I get beat up for it. You know, figuratively. People are like, you're a bitch. You don't like cops? I love cops. You're like, wow, man. You've been manipulated. But okay. So I'm just staying out of that shit. Whatever. But a lot of guys in prison are racist. That's just the nature of it. You know, you think someone like Freeway Ricky Ross, who I'm friends with, you think he's not fucking racist? He may not even consciously be aware of it. That man was set up by white cops. It was a very racially motivated thing. He was the black scapegoat for crack. How in the fuck, after spending 20 years in prison, racially divided prisons, does he not look at things from a racially skewed perspective? He has to. He's never told me that specifically, but I'm not even saying he's racist. I'm saying that he looks at things with the racial divide. And a lot of times when you've done a lot of time in prison, you become conditioned that way as well. So it was always difficult for me to be around people that were like really bad racist people, you know? They'd like talk about black guys and they'd be like, yeah, man, you know, I don't know. Sometime, I think in the 1980s, perhaps early 1990s, someone taught them how to read. They taught who to how to read? The black people. Like, the black people only learned how to read in the 80s and 90s? Well, I mean, it could have been the early 2000s. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure they can read now because I've seen them on Instagram. Wow. All right. And you're around, motherfucker. You're around ignorant fuckers like that in prison. Most of the white guys that were on the 1 yard were racist like that, or at least skinheads. But I've always gotten along with them because of the joke, because I have so much butt fuck humor. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? I'm Ryan. I like to butt fuck. They're like, oh my god, dude, you're so funny. Do you hate black people? I'm like, I fucking butt fuck black people. They're like, dude, come on. Bring a sausage, cut it up. Let's eat a soup together. You're like, dude, let me get your contact information. We should hang out after this. We're connecting right now, bro. You know, and that's like the kind of friendships you make in there. But anyway, the skinheads, they kind of like, always my play in prison has always been the clown because I'm not like a super tough guy. So I just kind of make jokes and people seem to like me in there. Not to say I don't get myself in trouble, because I do, but at this particular place and for the purpose of this particular story, it seemed like everybody liked me there. The skinheads liked me, the Southsiders, whatever. I didn't really have problems there. Dirty was already established there. My other homeboy Shreds, the guy that had all the drugs. It seemed like everybody there was so established and connected. Like Shreds was bringing in all the drugs. Dirty was tattooing. We just had it good, you know, and that became obvious to me right when I got there. Now, Shreds, probably like the second or third day I was there, I go into the bathroom because it's group bathroom stalls. It's like urinal, group shower, you know, and so in prison, like, it's uncouth to stand up and pee. Like, everybody pees like a little girl in prison. Like, it looks so fucking odd. Like, you see all these grown men and they, like, just take their pants down. They, like, tuck their dicks and they're just peeing sitting down so that you don't get urine on the toilet seat. It looks fucking odd. When you see some big old, like, fucking super serio Southsider, like, sit down and tuck his dick and he's like, what? Full of peeing. And then they, like, wipe their ass like it's a vagina. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? I thought you just peed. I did, bro. I'm just checking for warrants. You're like, okay. So, one day I walk into the bathroom. I think I was just going in there to wash my hands or something. I don't even remember why I was going in there. And I see, like, 3 guys looking at the toilet. One of the guys is Shreds. The other guy's, like, this old Mexican paisa dude. I forget what his name was, but they're all kind of just like looking into this toilet. And Shreds is like, hey, Leone, come here. I'm like, what's up? He's like, dude. Oh, the guy's name was Gramps. He was like some like elderly dope fiend. They're like, yeah, I gave Gramps the plug, the balloon full of drugs. It was like a couple ounces of hash. It was like these big black balls of hash that were in a balloon. He had given them to Gramps, and Gramps sat down on the toilet, and his blown out elderly dope fiend butthole, probably the size of a silver dollar or something, just like kind of gave way, and this plug fell into the toilet. And so they're kind of like looking in there. I'm like, okay, I don't think you're gonna see the plug, because the way that the plumbing works in prison, don't make fun of me. I don't know shit about plumbing, but I know that these particular pipes go like this. It like makes an L. I know that because we flush drugs down the toilet. It's not the first time this happened. So there's a way if you stick your hand in the toilet and you can get to like where it makes that L. If it hasn't been flushed, you can still grab what's fallen down the drain, like through the pipe or whatever. I'm like, have you stuck your hand in there? Now, I'm not looking in the toilet at this point. I'm just talking to them. And, you know, Shreds is like, dude, if you can retrieve the balloon, I'll give you like 10 grams of hash right now. I'm like, say no more. I'm there. And I look in the toilet, and it is as black as my wife beater. black, charcoaly shit. Looks like someone's dying of cirrhosis of the liver. So it's like syrupy shit has been in there. Grips, it's like I burped. I'm like, ew, dude, what the fuck are you eating, man? Are you taking iron supplements? He's like, I am, so I'm old. They call me Gramps. All right. So this is how, and I'm embarrassed to admit all this, but fuck it, I've already told you guys everything about my embarrassing life. I'm such a drug addict, and I didn't even care. Look, I don't like weed that much, but I knew that I could trade that hash for heroin, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the heroin. So I'm like thinking in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's great. That's 10 grams of hash. That's a lot. Gram of hash, and there was going for like $50, you know? So I could get a gram or two of heroin for that. You know, in the state prison system, they're going for like $250, $300. I could probably trade 10 grams of hash for 2 grams of heroin. So they had latex gloves. Everybody has latex gloves in prison because people tattoo, people make fifis out of them, which I did quite a bit. We'll get into that as the 1 yard stuff goes on. And so they had latex gloves. So I'm like, fuck it, you know what? I'll put it on, and I'm just going to stick my hand in there. No one had done that. It's probably because I have a small hand, because I have a small dick. I was like, I got this. Put the latex glove on. I put my hand in the toilet bowl. Now, it smelled probably like 100 times worse than it looked. It smelled like a whale carcass or something. Like, it didn't even smell. It smelled like spoiled seafood or so. It was fucking disgusting. And I'm just like putting my hand in there and I'm smelling it. And it's almost like putting your hand in the shitty water, like activates like disrupts the smell particle. Like it, I don't know. I probably sound really stupid right now. I think that when you stick your hand in water like that, that's like polluted with that kind of black, resiny shit, it moves the particles around and it just makes everything smell dank. It's literally smelled like I was in an oxygen mask with like horse shit or something. And I was just like, oh, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, all right, heroin. And I'm like sticking it in there and the smell, it just like permeates my inside of my nose. And I throw up. I think I had eaten burritos that somebody had. Yeah, I think I ate a wet burrito right beforehand. And I remember having my hand like pretty deep in the toilet. And I just started puking, right? So I'm throwing up while my hand's in this shitty toilet bowl. And they're like, you're making it worse. Because like now vomit's coming out of my mouth. And it's like making the black shit splash up, like some gets on my shirt and shit, and like that makes me puke even more. And I'm turning my head puking, and a CO's like, hey man, what are you doing? I mean, this does not look good. I have puke all over me. I've puked on the floor. My hand is probably like, I didn't think that, you know, there was going to be too much shit on my arm or whatever. Like, I thought there was going to be there was a shower right there. So I was planning on just washing off. But, like, it had gone, like I was deep. Like, I was, like, down in there. I'd already committed at that point. It's like, if a little shit touches your arm, doesn't matter how far up it goes. But it looked crazy. It looked like I was, like, fisting this fucking toilet bowl. There's just this black, resiny shit all over me. What am I going to... How can I explain that? Right? And I'm like, I lost the guard for my electric razor. It's like, do you seriously expect me to believe that? And I was like, yeah, dude, those things are like $20, bro. I don't have it like that, man. I'm poor. He's like, nah, I think you flushed some drugs down the toilet. I was like, hell, be my guest to look. And he comes and he's like, has his flashlight and he's like shining it in the bowl. This guy was a rookie. Usually when you have cops that are rookies, that are brand new like that, they push issues. That's just one of the problems with rookies anywhere. If you're out in the free world and you have a rookie cop pull you over, if you're in prison and a rookie cop finds you, almost shoulder deep in black, shitty water, they're going to push the issue. So he's like, all right, everybody out. And he's just like kind of flashing his flashlight. I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking like, well, he's not going to stick his hand in there or anything. And I couldn't feel it. I didn't feel anything. In fact, when I stuck my arm in there, all it did was make me puke because it kind of like redistributed the stench of the fucking toilet bowl or whatever. So everybody's leaving. He's like, not you. And I'm like, well, can I wash off, man? There's shit all over myself. He's like, that's fine. So I go in the shower and I like turn the knob and it sprays the shit off of me or whatever. He's on his radio and he calls for some maintenance guy. I don't know, but some guy that's like in charge of doing, I think it's like, some guy that's in charge of maintenance work, because the inmates do the maintenance work for the most part, but they also do have actual staff that they employ. And I think that it's for specific reasons like this, like people that are supposed to retrieve contraband like this. So he called that guy, I don't know, some guy that does shit like that. Because people get pretty creative in prison. They'll hide shanks in showers and, the little, like, the light sockets or like electrical sockets, people will use like their IDs to unscrew them. And that's where people will keep like tattoo guns that are put together, syringes, or whatever the case. So people are pretty clever in prison. So they have people that are like, their like sole purpose when they work at a prison is to be able to retrieve stuff like this. So this guy's not letting me leave. I'm just like, fuck. And I start thinking about it. Like, that's a lot of hash. I think there was 2 ounces. I was going to get 10 grams of it, but I believe there was 2 ounces. I can probably get that guy on the show. He's one of those guys that's pretty private. I don't know if he would be cool with like talking about, all this hash that he had or whatever. But I start tripping in my mind because I know that if I get caught with 2 ounces of hash like that, not only am I going to get an in-house possession, which is automatically 2 years. So that's like an extra year in prison because you do half time on it. You do 50% of it. Not only that, but they're going to give me distribution because it's so much. Now you're looking at like 5 years. Now you're looking at like 2.5 years. I couldn't even imagine having to call Karina back after like the wonderful conversation we had where we were both like, well, we were both pretty emotional that I was coming home after all the time that we'd spent apart, especially considering that I'd never even had an opportunity to be, with Nico in the free world like that. And then to call her back and be like, oh, actually, yeah, my friend dropped a couple ounces of hash in the shitty, like, bowels of some toilet. And, yeah, I'm going to come home in, like, probably, like, 2.5 years, maybe 2 years if I'm good and I get my GED. Yeah, right, she'd leave me, I'd come home and Nika be being raised by some stockbroker or something. And I'd just be, like, the stepdad, even though it's my biological kid. I'd be the loser. Fuck that. So I start panicking, and I'm just like kind of thinking like, well, we didn't have tools to open up this toilet and to look through it. The maintenance guy is going to come and he's actually going to be able to open it and he's actually going to be able to find it. I'm just sitting there and the cop's asking me, it's like, hey man, is there anything you want to tell me? I'm like what? Do you want to tell me what's actually in there? Because we're going to take the toilet apart. If there's drugs in there, man, you're going to get charged with it. But if you tell me the truth right now, then we won't do anything. Well, let me tell you something. Never admit to shit. Deny, deny, deny. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I left my my razor guard in there. It's $20. He's like, you were sticking your arm in a shitty toilet bowl to get a razor guard for an electric razor? I was like, yeah. Dude, you can't replace that shit. I said, I can only get my quarterly packages like once a year. That's all my family can afford. He's like, yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And in fact, just because you're lying to me, you're pissing me off even more. I'm going to make sure that with whatever we find, you're going to get charged with. I'm just like, fuck. And we will get into what happened in this situation and what happens with the pending riot situation in the next installment. If you're not on Patreon, check out patreon.com/Ryan Leone. The link is in the pinned comments. That is how I support myself and my family for the moment. And there's a lot of exclusive storylines on there. So if you enjoy hearing stories about my life, there's even more stuff on there. Different storylines from different parts of my life, not just prison. And I'd appreciate it if you would just check it out. Oh shit, I'm still smoking. I'm gonna get yelled at by Karina. I appreciate you all. You guys continue to stay safe. Palabra.